Barrett Strong's Money, That's What I Want, in 1959, that feeling of unveiling is patent and fierce, and it is just as strong now. Here is where Benjaminson's experience as a crime reporter, street reporter, city reporter, privately employed but as well a kind of public actor, with a debt to the truth owed to the public, comes into play. Motown created events with the making, release, and marketing of its records. Millions of people were affected by those events, and it's not merely the notion that some of those people might be interested in the story of how that happened that powers Benjaminson's book. It's the conviction that everyone and anyone whose life was touched by what happened at Motown deserves access to that story, which is to say, in a perhaps small but undeniable manner, access to their own lives. That's perhaps why the story as Benjaminson tells it, regardless of who he spoke to, who trusted him, whose trust he honored, an inside story, with the certainty that the betrayal is always more important than the promise, the secret more relevant than the verifiable fact. It is Motown as public domain. With such a spirit animating the book, every detail, from the start, the exemplary story of the Berry clan from its beginnings in Georgia, Berry Gordy's own beginning in the 50s, hustling songs to Jackie Wilson, the list of hits he wrote or co-wrote before anyone outside of small music circles knew his name is stunning. Reet Petite, That's Why, I Love You So, Lonely Teardrops, more. The early Motown business model of making every 45 a hit takes on enormous pressure, the pressure that comes with any incident in the greater story, be that a decision, a hunch, a bet, an act of generosity or cruelty, a sacrifice for the good of the company or the company sacrificing someone who was part of it, seems at once unlikely and inevitable. And that means, as one listens to the book now, maybe already knowing how so many of the stories turned out. Marvin Gaye turning both Motown and his own life inside out with What's Going On in 1971, and then dead by his own father's hand. Michael Jackson leaving the company in 1975, creating the biggest hit in history with Thriller in 1982, becoming perhaps the most famous person in the world by 1984, and dead from a drug overdose at 50. The Contours, Do You Love Me, and 100 other recordings sounding like miracles 50 years or more after they were made. You keep listening with the feeling that you don't know. Benjaminson's book doesn't beg the question of whether it all really happened the way he says it did, because as he tells the story, that question fades against its answer, the fact that it happened at all. Peter Benjaminson and Grail Marcus attended Menlo Atherton High School together in Menlo Park from 1959 to 1963. A few years before Bob Weir, later of the Grateful Dead, and Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks, later of Fleetwood Mac, took their turns at the same desks. Introduction. If I could find a white man who had the Negro sound and the Negro feeling, I could make $1 million. Sam Phillips, who went on to discover Elvis Presley. We stole more records than anybody. Former executive of a white-owned record company. For more than 100 years, much of American popular music has been black. Minstrel shows, ragtime, Dixieland, jazz, swing, boogie-woogie, blues, and rock and roll all were created by blacks and later copied by whites. Music was one of the few areas in which blacks were allowed almost total freedom, even during slavery. They inherited a well-developed African musical tradition and enhanced it through contact with hymn-singing missionaries. African-American music was attractive to whites. The blues scale, the call-and-response forms were very similar to European folk music. And white musicians liked a strong beat, as centuries of marches and polkas, dancing and drinking songs demonstrated. Whites liked black music so much they stole it and proofed from it. This was as true of rock and roll as it was of earlier musical forms originated by blacks. In fact, the earliest white rock and roll hits were re-recordings of songs already recorded by black musicians. These re-recordings were called covers. Black singer Joe Turner first recorded Shake, Rattle, and Roll, but a white group, Bill Haley and his Comets,